The Picture of Dorian Gray is a novel written by the famous poet, writer, journalist and playwright Oscar Wilde in 1890. Oscar Wilde was born in Dublin on October 16, 1854. From an early age, he excels in school and is particularly passionate about poetry. During the mid-80s, he becomes a writer for the Pall Mall Gazette, as an anonymous author managing a column called The Poet's Corner, to review new books of poetry that were published. Even though Wilde is now known as one of the greatest writers of the Victorian age, during his career he has been criticized and questioned more than once. But the event that made the biggest impact on his life was the trial that sentenced him to 2 years in prison and hard labor for suspicions about his sexual orientation. The novel is considered to be the manifesto of aesthetism, as the plot entirely revolves around the concept of beauty. The novel takes place in the Victorian London of the 19th century and features Dorian Gray, a good-looking young man who will end up making his beauty an insane obsession. Dorian is well aware of his beauty, but he begins to realize the privilege of his charm when his friend, the painter Basil Hallward, gives him a portrait that he painted, which reproduces him in the peak of his youth. At Hallward's studio, Dorian meets Lord Henry Wotton, a charming and charismatic man who quickly falls into the good graces of Mr. Gray. This meeting drastically affects Dorian's life, as, through his charisma and his provocative words, Wotton negatively influences Dorian and convinces him to lead an eccentric lifestyle. Because of Lord Wotton's influence, Dorian begins to have an unhealthy relationship with the concept of beauty and youth, so much that he envies his own portrait, that will be eternally beautiful and young while he ages. Struck by absolute panic, Dorian decides to make a sort of pact with the devil, thanks to which he will remain eternally young and beautiful, while the painting will show signs of physical decay and moral corruption of the character. In the book, Dorian falls in love with a theatre actress named Sybil Vane, fascinated by her great artistic abilities. The two start an intense and troubled love affair that ends with the suicide of the girl right after her lover abandons her for a poorly acted play. Dorian is shocked, seeing that his image in the painting grows old and assumes frightening grimaces every time he commits a morally wrongful action, as if the painting were the physical representation of his conscience. So, he hides the painting in the attic and abandons himself to a life of moral corruption and fun, sure that it will be the painting to suffer the consequences. Dorian will not reveal the painting's condition to anyone until the day of his 38th birthday, when his old friend Basil pays him a visit to say goodbye as he was leaving for Paris. Dorian decides to show the painting to his friend, who is admittedly horrified and begs him to repent of his sins. But Dorian, in a fit of mad anger, grabs a knife and kills his friend. Unable to feel regret, he occasionally goes to the attic to check and mock his painting that grows old and ugly day after day. It will be the meeting with James Vane, Sybil's brother, to trigger in Dorian a strong sense of guilt that will convince him to change his life. At the end of the book, Dorian, devastated by frustration, stabs the painting with the same knife he used to kill Basil. It will be the servants to find Dorian dead, with a dagger stuck in his heart, unrecognizable and prematurely aged, right next to the painting, magically returned young and beautiful. Between the plot of Oscar Wilde's novel and the 2009 movie adaptation directed by Oliver Parker, there are several differences. First of all, in the book, Dorian is blonde, curly-haired and blue-eyed, while in the movie is quite the opposite. Moreover, in the novel, Dorian meets Lord Wotton in Basil's studio, while in the adaptation, he meets him at a social event organized to show the bourgeois society the work of art created by the painter. Which leads us to another big difference. In the book, the painting is never shown in public, as it represents a very intimate bond between Basil and Dorian, a bond that in the book is rendered implicitly given the conservative age in which the author lived, but that in the movie is represented quite explicitly. Another element that is added by the movie adaptation is Dorian's childhood, which is never mentioned in the book. We can also find differences in the representation of the love story between Sybil and Dorian. In the book, Dorian sees Sybil acting for the first time during a performance of Romeo and Juliet, while in the movie she is acting in the Hamlet. Also, as we have seen before, in the book the two lovers break up after a bad theatrical performance by Sybil, who, due to the carefree nature of falling in love, is no longer able to interpret dramatic roles with the same enthusiasm as before. In the movie, however, their breakup is due to the corruptive work of Lord Wotton. But the difference that certainly stands out the most is the addition in the movie of the character of Emily Wotton, almost absent in the book. Emily is the daughter of Lord Wotton and is added to represent the turning point for Dorian. In fact, it is when the young man falls in love with her that he decides that he wants to change his life.